My husband Marcus had just finished 38 years at the Westward Steel Plant, and the whole room stood to celebrate him. His boss, Cormac Hale, raised his glass high and said, "To the man who built this company, and to his loyal wife at home." People cheered, cameras flashed. Everyone acted like we were the perfect couple. I smiled, but inside I was shaking because I knew something they didn't. When the room quieted, I walked to the microphone, lifted my chin, and said, "Before we go any further, I want you all to hear what loyalty meant to the men standing behind this table." Then I pressed play on the small recorder in my hand. Cormac's voice filled the hall, offering my husband $250,000 to leave me for his secretary. Every face in that room changed at once. My life changed with it. I spent the entire day preparing for that moment. I curled my hair, put on a deep blue dress, and practiced my smile until it felt real enough to fool a room full of strangers. Marcus complimented me on the way out the door. "You look beautiful, Helena." I thanked him, even though the words tasted bitter. He had stopped saying things like that months ago. Hearing it now felt like a trick meant to keep me quiet. The retirement banquet was held at the downtown convention hall. Every table had silver centerpieces shaped like gears, a nod to the steel plant. Old co-workers shook Marcus's hand like he was some kind of legend. They patted my shoulder and told me I must be proud. I nodded and kept my posture steady while my stomach twisted. I kept catching the secretary, Talia Vance, staring at Marcus from across the room. Her eyes followed him like she had a right to be jealous that he stood next to me. She wore a tight red dress and a smile that faded every time Marcus looked my way. My daughter Risa leaned in and whispered, "Mom, why is she looking at Dad like that?" My heart jumped, but I forced a calm answer. "People look where they want to look. Ignore her." My son Jalen sat beside me. He watched everything. He always did. "Mom, you're too quiet," he said. "Something is going on." I squeezed his hand. "I'll tell you soon." I knew he deserved the truth, but I needed the timing to be perfect. The moment the lights dimmed for Cormac's speech, I felt a cold wave run through me. He talked about Marcus's dedication. He talked about their bond. Then he said, "Behind every great man, there is a loyal woman like Helena." People applauded again. Cormac gave me a smile that looked warm to everyone else. But to me, it felt like he was daring me to keep my mouth shut. He had no idea what I was about to do. I felt the recorder in my purse. I remembered the day I found it on Marcus's hidden phone, sitting in the truck under a pile of receipts. I remembered the shock of hearing Cormac offer money for my husband to get rid of me. I remembered the moment my heart stopped beating for a second, and then came back stronger, fueled by anger and clarity. I was not going to cry. I was not going to beg. I was going to stand in front of the entire company and take back every bit of power they thought I did not have. So when the MC asked if anyone else wanted to speak, I stood. Chairs shifted. People turned. Marcus whispered, "Helena, not now." I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Now is exactly right." I walked to the microphone with steady steps, knowing the entire room would never forget what came next. The conflict began long before the night of the retirement party, although at the time I did not know what I was walking into. It started one warm afternoon when I drove Marcus's truck to pick up groceries because my car was in the shop. I reached into the glove compartment looking for insurance papers, and a second cell phone slid out. I froze. Marcus and I had shared the same phone plan for years. He never mentioned a second phone. My first thought was that it belonged to a coworker. My second thought, the one that made my hands shake, was that it belonged to him. I clicked the power button, and the screen lit up with a wallpaper I had never seen before. It was a picture of Talia, the secretary from the plant, smiling in a low-cut dress. My breath caught in my throat. I knew then that something was terribly wrong. The phone did not have a password. The moment I opened the messages, I felt like the world dropped out from under me. There were long text threads between Marcus and Talia, filled with flirty pictures, late-night messages, and plans for weekends when he claimed he had overtime. He called her sweetheart and my real future. He told her he would not let his old life hold him back. I scrolled through them over and over, feeling the kind of cold that settles deep in your bones. Then I found a series of messages between Marcus and his boss. Cormac Hale. They were short and direct. Cormac wrote, "We make the move after retirement." Marcus replied, "I want the payment first." Cormac shot back, "We both know this only works if she is out of the picture." The phrase hit me so hard that I had to sit still for a minute just to catch my breath. When I found the audio files, I almost wished I had never looked at the phone. The first file opened with the sound of a door closing. Then Cormac's voice, slow and confident, said, 250,000. It is clean and quiet. You leave Helena. You marry Talia. You stay in the house a few months so it looks natural. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers throbbed. Marcus answered calmly, "I want it in writing." Cormac laughed and said, "You will get your check once I know she is not a problem anymore." My husband replied, "She won't fight. She trusts me." Hearing my own life being traded like a business deal cracked something inside me. I replayed the recording again and again, hoping I had heard wrong, but the words were clear. He was preparing to leave me the second he walked out of that plant. He had spent decades building a retirement with me only to cash me out like I was some old piece of furniture. When I got home, I tried to hide the shaking in my hands. Noelle was the first person I told. When she heard the recording, she slammed her palm down on my kitchen counter and said, "You are not letting this man walk away with your dignity." She was the one who told me, "If you want real justice, make them face what they did in front of every person they respect." That thought planted itself in me like a seed. Over the next week, I kept discovering more signs that Marcus had been preparing his escape. I found a refinance notice in the mail with his signature on it. He had emptied our joint savings account and opened a private one. There were purchases I had never seen before. Hotel bookings, expensive clothing, a ring that definitely was not meant for me. Talia had become the center of his life, and I had been pushed quietly to the side without even realizing it. My heart hurt, but anger started rising stronger than the hurt. My kids noticed the tension, even though I tried to hide it. Jalen confronted me one night while I was cleaning the kitchen. He asked, "Mom, is Dad cheating?" I swallowed hard and told him I would explain soon. Risa hugged me for a long time without asking questions. She simply said, "Whatever he is doing, he does not get to break you." Their support gave me strength. With every secret I uncovered, the betrayal grew sharper, but so did my resolve. By the night of the retirement party, I was no longer the confused wife who found a secret phone. I was a woman ready to take back her power. I walked into that banquet hall knowing exactly what I planned to do, and knowing that Marcus and Cormac had no idea how close their lies were to being exposed. The turning point began the morning I sat at the kitchen table with the recording device in front of me and the second phone beside it. The sun came through the blinds, lighting the table in a soft glow that felt painfully peaceful compared to the storm inside me. I listened to the recording again, forcing myself to hear every word without crying this time. I needed to let the shock fade and let something stronger take its place. I needed clarity. I needed a plan. I kept thinking about how Marcus had looked at me for months with that tired expression, acting like I was the problem, acting like he was carrying the weight of the world, when in reality, he was only carrying secrets. There was a moment while I sat there when I almost wanted to throw the phone into the sink and pretend none of this was happening. Pretend he was still the man who held my hand during Risa's birth and built a crib for Jalen with his own hands. But every time I wanted to believe in the old Marcus, I remembered the cold tone he used in the recording when he said, "She won't fight. She trusts me." He counted on my silence. He counted on the fact that I loved him too much to ever expose him. Realizing that was the moment I knew I had to stop being the quiet wife who carried the emotional weight of our marriage. I would not sit quietly and wait for him to take my home, my future, and my dignity. I would take control of the ending of this marriage. I picked up the recorder and placed it in my purse. That small action felt like locking a door behind me and stepping into a new version of myself. I spent the next few days preparing for the retirement party with a focus that felt strange, almost cold. I chose a simple, deep blue dress because I wanted to look calm and strong. I practiced what I would say in the bathroom mirror, but eventually I stopped trying to plan every word. I knew that once I stood at the microphone, the truth would come out on its own. I called Noelle and told her my plan. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She simply said, "Make sure you stand tall, make sure you breathe, and make sure they never forget this day." I thanked her and hung up, feeling her confidence settle into me like armor. The night before the party, I sat down with my wedding ring in my palm. I remembered the day Marcus gave it to me, how his hands shook with nerves. I remembered the promise he made to love me for life. Now I knew he had broken that promise long before I ever realized it. I slid the ring back on, not because I wanted to keep the marriage alive, but because I wanted to walk into that banquet hall looking like the devoted wife he had underestimated. I wanted him to see how strong I was. On the day of the party, I got ready in silence while Marcus hummed in the bathroom like nothing was wrong. He kissed my cheek before we left, and the touch felt like ice. When we arrived at the convention hall, I scanned the room and took in every detail. The sparkling lights, the decorated tables, the slideshow featuring photos from Marcus's years at the plant. Everyone greeted us with smiles, shaking Marcus's hand and praising his hard work. I smiled politely, but my focus stayed sharp. Talia stood near the corner with a drink in her hand, wearing a red dress that matched her lipstick. She kept glancing at Marcus with a mix of pride and impatience. Marcus looked nervous whenever their eyes met. For a moment, he looked like a man standing on a trapdoor he did not know was about to open. Jalen and Risa stayed close to me throughout the evening. They kept asking if I was doing all right. I told them I was fine, and strangely, I meant it. There was a calmness settling inside me. It felt like the silence before a storm finally breaks. When the MC called everyone to attention for speeches, I felt my heart beat hard, but steady. Cormac stepped forward with a wide smile and a glass of champagne. He talked about Marcus's dedication, his leadership, his loyalty to the plant. He made a joke about how Marcus practically lived at the factory. The audience laughed. Cormac looked right at me and said, "And behind every great man is a loyal woman. Helena, thank you for standing by him all these years." The hypocrisy made my stomach twist. When he finished, the room applauded loudly. That was the moment I knew I had to stand up. If I hesitated, I would lose the courage I had built. I rose from my chair. The scrape of the chair on the floor felt louder than it should have. Marcus's smile faded instantly. He leaned toward me and whispered in a sharp voice, "What are you doing?" I looked him directly in the eyes and said, "Telling the truth." His face paled. Cormac shifted uncomfortably on the stage. Talia lowered her glass. Every eye turned toward me as I walked slowly to the microphone. The steps felt heavy, but steady. All the fear I had felt for weeks turned into a firm resolve. My decision had already been made. There was no turning back. When I reached the microphone, the entire room shifted into a tense silence, the kind that makes the air feel heavier than normal. I could feel every set of eyes on me, waiting for a heartfelt speech or a tearful tribute to Marcus's long career. What they did not expect was the truth I carried in my purse. I placed my hands on the sides of the podium and took a steady breath. For the first time in months, I felt fully in control. The room waited. Marcus stood stiff behind me, his hand half raised as if he wanted to pull me away, but did not want to make a scene. Cormac adjusted his tie and forced a grin, but his eyes were nervous. Talia gripped her wineglass so tight, her knuckles turned pale. I began speaking in a calm voice that surprised even me. I said, "Thank you all for being here. 38 years is a long time, and Marcus has worked hard. But tonight is not only about the years he gave to this company. It is also about the truth behind those years." The room grew still. A few people exchanged confused glances. Marcus stepped forward and hissed in a low voice, "Helena, stop. This is not the place." I ignored him and continued, "I want to share something with you all, something I discovered recently that changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage and about the people who run this company." I reached into my purse and pulled out the small black recorder. The sight of it made Marcus's face drain of color. Cormac froze completely. Talia's lips parted like she had forgotten how to breathe. I held the device up and said clearly, "This is the voice of your CEO and my husband." A private conversation they thought no one would ever hear. Several people leaned forward. Someone whispered loudly, "What is she talking about?" I pressed the play button. The speakers crackled, and then Cormac's unmistakable voice echoed through the hall. 250,000. Leave Helena. Marry Talia. Make it clean. The company cannot afford a messy image right now. The room gasped all at once, like a sharp intake of breath shared by 100 people. The recording continued. You will get the money after the divorce. She will not fight you. You said it yourself. She trusts you. Another wave of shocked murmurs swept through the crowd. A woman covered her mouth. A few men shook their heads in disbelief. A supervisor near the back muttered, "This can't be real." Marcus lunged toward me to grab the recorder, but I stepped back quickly and raised my voice. "You touch me, and this becomes even worse for you. Stay exactly where you are." He froze, shaking with anger and panic. The recorder kept playing. Marcus's own voice was next, calm and cold. "I want the payment in writing. I am not losing 30 years of work without something solid." Cormac's voice followed. "You will have it. Just get rid of her first." When the recording ended, the hall fell into a silence so deep it felt like time had stopped. Then everything erupted at once. Several board members stood up from the head table, whispering urgently to one another. They looked both furious and afraid. A few of Marcus's co-workers stared at him like they had never seen him before. Someone shouted, "Is this a joke?" Another man replied, "That sounded real to me." Talia set her wine glass on the table, her hands trembling. She whispered, "Marcus, what did you do?" Marcus's entire face twisted with panic. He reached for my arm and said in a pleading voice, "Helena, please, we can handle this privately." I pulled my arm away. "No, you were planning to throw me away quietly. You do not get privacy now." He opened his mouth as if to argue, but the board chairman cut him off by stepping up to the podium. "Cormac," the chairman said. "Is this real?" Cormac stammered. "This is taken out of context. She is twisting something innocent." It was a hypothetical conversation. The entire room roared with disbelief. Someone yelled, "Offering hush money is innocent?" Another shouted, "You paid him to dump his wife?" The crowd grew louder. Some stood. Others pulled out their phones. The scandal spread through the room like lightning. Marcus's knees buckled slightly. His long, careful career, built over decades, was collapsing in minutes. Cormac backed away from the podium, sweating and red-faced. The board chairman raised his hand and barked, "Cormac Hale, step outside, right now. We need to speak privately. And bring your lawyer." Cormac tried to protest, but two security staff members approached him. That was when he realized he had lost control. He walked out stiffly, trying to save face, but the whispers followed him like shadows. Talia stood up and walked toward Marcus, but he stepped back from her, suddenly embarrassed by the woman he had nearly ruined his life for. She whispered, "Tell me you didn't actually do this." Marcus whispered back, "I did it for us." She slapped him across the face. The sound cracked across the room. She stormed out with tears spilling down her cheeks. Marcus turned to me, his voice shaking with desperation. "Helena, please, let's talk. You misunderstood everything." I held his gaze and answered clearly, "I understood exactly what you planned. You thought you could trade me for money and a younger woman. You thought I would break quietly. You were wrong." He reached toward me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "You made your choices." Jalen and Risa appeared behind me, both of them standing firm. Risa glared at her father with disappointment so deep it almost hurt to look at. Jalen moved slightly in front of me, not aggressively, but protectively, as if he was shielding me from whatever Marcus might try next. The room continued buzzing with outrage and shock. Some people stood to comfort me. Others walked out muttering that they would never respect Marcus again. The board members huddled at one table, already discussing investigations and legal consequences. It was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos that comes right after the truth has been forced into the open. And through all of it, I felt a strange sense of peace spreading through me. Not happiness, not relief, but a powerful calm. The truth was no longer my burden alone. The lies had been exposed in front of the very people Marcus and Cormac hoped to impress. Their perfect image had cracked wide open, and they were left to face the ruins on their own. I stood there with my head high, while the world they built on secrets crumbled around them. In that moment, I knew I had taken back my power. The aftermath of that night felt like waking up in a different world, one where every lie had been scraped away and only the raw truth remained. When I walked out of the banquet hall with Jalen and Risa on either side of me, I felt lighter than I had in years, even though my marriage had just exploded in front of 100 people. The cold night air hit my face and cleared my mind. Risa hugged me and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mom." Jalen said, "He deserved every second of that." Hearing my children take my side so firmly filled me with strength. For so long, I had wanted to protect them from the cracks in the marriage, but they already knew I had been carrying too much pain alone. When I got home, I sat in the living room in the quiet dark and allowed myself to feel everything all at once: anger, sadness, betrayal, and a strange sense of freedom. I had not planned to destroy Marcus's reputation that night. I had planned to reveal the truth. The destruction was simply the natural consequence of the choices he had made. The next morning, I woke up to a phone full of messages. Some were from coworkers who had been there the night before. Some were from women I barely knew, women who wrote things like, "Thank you for standing up for yourself," and "I wish I had done what you did." A few messages were cruel, calling me dramatic, or saying I ruined Marcus's big night. But those messages did not bother me. People who have never lived through betrayal will never understand what it does to your heart. That afternoon, Marcus showed up at the house without calling. I saw him through the window before he knocked. He looked exhausted, like the weight of the entire world had landed on him overnight. I opened the door just enough to look him in the eye. His voice was soft and desperate. "Helena, please, you have to believe I didn't mean for it to go this far." I answered calmly, "Everything you meant is on that recording." He ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. I was confused. I was under pressure. Cormac pushed me. I replied, "You agreed to take money to throw away your family." That was not confusion. That was a choice. He stepped back slightly, like the words had physically hit him. "Can we fix this?" he asked with a small, broken voice. I shook my head gently. "No. You ended this long before I ever touched that microphone." He begged to come inside, but I told him firmly that he needed to leave. I closed the door on him without guilt. Later that week, the real consequences began. The company suspended Marcus while they reviewed the recording and the events at the retirement party. He lost access to the plant, his company email, and his retirement benefits pending the investigation. He tried to reach me again, not for forgiveness, but for help. He asked me to make a statement to the company saying I misunderstood the recording. He said the board was prepared to freeze his pension until they determined whether he was involved in misconduct. I told him I would not lie for him. He cursed under his breath, then apologized immediately, but I had already hung up the phone. That same afternoon, news broke that the company had launched a full internal review of Cormac Hale. The board discovered financial issues, suspicious payments, and inconsistencies in the books that went back years. Cormac resigned before they could fire him. The local news picked up the story. They did not mention my name, but everyone in town knew what had happened. During all of this, Talia quit her job and moved out of town. A friend from the plant told me she had been crying in the parking lot the day after the party. She told people Marcus had promised her a new life and a house, and now he could not offer her anything. Part of me felt pity for her. Maybe she fell in love with the version of Marcus he pretended to be, but she also helped him plan a future where I would be left with nothing. So that pity was thin. With Marcus suspended and the company freezing accounts, the first pension check bounced. When I opened the envelope and saw the notice, I laughed a small, bitter laugh. It felt like justice arriving right on time. I contacted a divorce attorney the next day. Not just any attorney, but one recommended by Noel, who said he was sharp enough to cut steel. I brought him the phone, the recording, the refinance papers, and all the evidence I had collected. He told me I had enough to protect my home, my savings, and my rights. He told me Marcus would not walk away from this divorce as the victim. I felt a sense of relief wash through me. For years, I had carried the marriage like a heavy backpack with stones hidden inside it. Now, someone was finally helping me unload it. During the divorce process, I learned even more truths. I learned that Marcus had been lying to me about money for years. I learned that he had asked Cormac for several small loans behind my back. I learned that he had opened cards in his name to hide purchases he made for Talia. Every new truth removed the last piece of guilt I had ever felt. I realized the marriage had been dying long before the affair. I had just been trying too hard to keep it alive. 3 months after the retirement party, I moved into my mother's old lake house. It was quiet, peaceful, and full of sunlight. Risa came over every weekend to help decorate. Jalen fixed the dock and brought groceries every Saturday morning. We cooked dinners together, talked about the future, and laughed in a way we had not laughed in years. I realized then that a broken marriage did not mean a broken life. It meant a new beginning. I no longer felt trapped by Marcus's choices. I felt free to live the rest of my life on my own terms. Now, when I think back on that night at the banquet hall, I do not see it as the night my marriage ended. I see it as the night my strength woke up. The truth hurt, but it also saved me. It pulled me out of a life built on lies and pushed me into one built on honesty and self-respect. If there was a lesson in all of this, it was simple. Betrayal does not define you. What you do after it does. And I chose to rise. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to my channel and comment where you are watching from.